The Environmental Management Agency is a statutory body responsible for ensuring the sustainable management of natural resources and protection of the environment. Welcome to another episode of Ecoville. I'm your host, Nonsigelelo Kwaka. A lot of us know about EMA, but do we really understand its mandate? We talk of pollution, protection of wetlands, and many other matters pertaining to the environment. But do we really understand the agency's function? Today, we are joined by the agency's communications officer, Mrs. Joyce Chapungu, who is here to discuss these issues with us. Welcome to the program, Joyce.
Thank you, Nancy. Thanks for having me.
First things first, we want to understand what are the roles and functions of the Environmental Management Agency.
As you rightly said, Nancy, that the Environmental Management Agency is a statutory body which is mandated to ensure the sustainable utilization of natural resources as well as prevention of pollution. We have two broad functions that are clearly stated in the Environmental Management Act. And the first function is to formulate quality standards on air, water, soil, noise, vibration, radiation, and waste management. So these standards are supposed to be in tandem with international standards that are there, so that we ensure that as we dispose of whichever substances into the environment, we make sure that we apply these minimum standards so that we do not cause pollution to the environment. Then the other function is to assist and participate in any matter pertaining to the management of the environment. And such matters include development of guidelines for the preparation of environmental plans at national, as well as local level. Also to regulate and monitor the collection, treatment, and recycling of waste. And this is quite important and is also highlighted in the national blueprint, which is the National Development Strategy 1, is one of the major priority areas in the environment sector. The other matter is to regulate and monitor the discharge of emissions or any pollutants, including hazardous substances, into the environment, as well as regulation of invasive alien species, also regulation and monitoring of the environmental impact assessments. And these environmental impact assessments are just evaluations of projects which have the potential to cause harm to the environment, so that we can also come up with solutions to the impacts that can be caused by those projects. Other functions include the regulation of utilization of ecologically fragile ecosystems such as wetlands, stream banks, and riverbeds, and also to develop incentives for the protection of the environment, incentives which then encourage people and stakeholders to protect the environment more, and also to recommend to the government the conventions that the government should become a signatory to. For example, Zimbabwe is a signatory to a number of environmental conventions, such as the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, the Minamata Convention of Mercury, which was ratified recently this year. We also have the role of recommending to the minister any formulation of regulations pertaining to environmental management. So in cases where we realize that maybe there's a gap in the environmental legislation and there's need for some editing and some other inputs in line with current developments that will be happening in the environment sector, it is also the role of the Environmental Management Agency to suggest and to recommend to the minister such formulations of regulations. In a nutshell, I can say these are some of the functions of the Environmental Management Agency. They're quite a lot, so I will just end here.
All right. It seems it's such a broad spectrum. You look into so many issues. So we'll try in the time that we have to discuss some of those. And the first one, which is very current during this time, is the issue of veld fires. So this is veld fire season, and it starts from the 31st of July to the 31st of October every year. So usually it's unfortunate that property and lives are usually lost during this season. So I wanted to know how many lives have been lost and what is the estimated cost of loss of property so far this season.
And yes, we are in the fire season, and like you rightly said, it starts from the 31st of July up to the 31st of October, or the onset of the first effective rains. Just to give a background of why this period is called the fire season, it's not because we encourage people to start fires during the season, but it's because of the environmental and weather conditions that are conducive for the occurrence of wildfires. During this period, there will be a lot of dry biomass, especially in areas which receive good rainfall. It will be windy, it will be hot. So all those conditions, they are conducive for the occurrence of wildfires. And statutorily, this period ends on the 31st of October. But because of other issues, including the issues to do with climate change, where our seasons have shifted a bit, it has been realized that there's a need for the fire season to end when we receive the first effective rainfall, because that's the period when the conditions for wildfires will have been minimized.
Mm-hmm.
So for this year, unfortunately, if we look at what we call the fire risk prediction that we develop as EMA, we develop this every year before the onset of the fire season, so that we have an idea of the risk that is at hand, and also to inform decision makers and implementers to plan accordingly. So according to this year's risk prediction, the country is 90% of the country actually is in the high to extreme high risk to wildfires. Mm-hmm. And this can be attributed to the good rains that the country received in the last rainy season, which results in the growth of a lot of biomass. And that biomass, when it is dry, it creates a conducive environment for the occurrence of wildfires. Since the onset of the fire season on the 31st of July 2021, we've recorded 1,517 fire incidences, which have destroyed over 400,000 hectares of forest and grassland. This is an 84% increase compared with the same period in 2020, where 395 wildfire incidences had been recorded, destroying over 220,000 hectares. In as much as the fire incidences recorded this year are higher than the ones recorded during the same period last year, the average burnt area for this year is actually lower than that of last year. Where for 2021, the average burnt area is 269 hectares, while for 2020, it was 558 hectares during the same period. And we attribute this decrease in the average burnt area to active participation of firefighting teams in putting out wildfires. And that can also be attributed to our engagement with communities, our training of firefighting teams, and the support that we render to them. And also, it's quite unfortunate that we have already lost 3 lives from wildfires during this year. The first incident where we lost life was in Burungwe district, where a fire destroyed a house where teachers from St. Michael's Primary School lived in. And unfortunately, there were 2 children in that house, and they were burnt to death. It's quite unfortunate. And if you look at those statistics, you realize that both deaths and even the fire incidences in general, they are higher in Mashonaland West Province. And it has been like that for a while. And the major reason being that the land use patterns in Mashonaland Central, and also the type of vegetation, the type of the grasslands found in Mashonaland West, and the amount of rainfall as well that is received in that particular province. But what it then means is that there has to be a lot of effort in terms of preparing beforehand, before the fire season occurs, in terms of the pre-suppression measures. It then means that areas like these, they also need more effort so that we don't continue incurring such losses.
What preventative measures can be implemented to prevent veld fires?
Like when we look at the occurrence of veld fires or any fire in general, it's visualizing a triangle where we have heat, we have biomass, then we also have oxygen. So if you want to control that fire, you have to remove either of the three ingredients. So for us, biomass is the ingredient that we have control over. It's difficult to control the heat and it's difficult to control the oxygen, but the biomass can be controlled. So most of our programs are centered on biomass reduction. And some of the things that we do in order to reduce biomass, or what we encourage communities to do, is early burning. Like we are saying, before the onset of the fire season, like around May, June, and July, before the 31st of July, we encourage early burning, especially in areas which have got a lot of biomass, in pastures, in areas with wildlife, so that by the time the fire season comes, even if there is a fire outbreak, it won't cause a lot of damage because the grass will be shorter. There won't be that much of biomass. We also encourage the construction of fire guards, and fire guards should be at least 9 meters wide, and they should be free from any flammable material. And we encourage these fire guards to be constructed around any property that needs to be protected, including homesteads, farms, pastures, gardens, you name it. So the idea is to remove biomass from that particular stretch of land that has been cleared, which we call the fire guard, so that in the event of a fire outbreak, even if people are going to fight the fire, at least they can do so from the fire guard. And also in some instances, depending on the nature of the fire, it means sometimes also the fire won't be able to cross over a fire guard, especially if it has been constructed in the right manner and if it's the correct dimensions. Then we also encourage and support communities to reduce biomass by making hay bales. And these bales can also be sold to those that have livestock. They can be used as livestock feed. So by selling the hay bales, the communities can actually make livelihoods out of that. They can also do cut grass for thatching, thatch grass harvesting. We've got a number of community projects around that, where communities cut grass, they process it for thatching, they sell. So at the end of the day, they are making a living out of selling the thatch grass, but at the same time, they've protected the environment also from veld fires. So basically, we are saying before the onset of each fire season, there is need for efforts around biomass reduction, pre-suppression measures, to make sure that by the time we get to the fire season, the risk of wildfires in our communities will be greatly reduced through such initiatives.
Thank you for giving us all those preventative measures. It's good to be told to have the information so we can prevent such fires. So at the beginning, when you were introducing the mandate of the agency, you spoke of the Ramsar Convention. So Zimbabwe is a signatory to the Ramsar Convention, which is a global intergovernmental treaty that provides the framework for national action and international cooperation for the conservation and wise use of wetlands and their resources. Do you think, as a signatory to this convention, we've been able to protect our wetlands as a country?
All right, as a nation, we are progressing well in terms of wetlands management. We still have more that has to be done so that we can safely say we have managed to put our wetlands into sustainable use. So as part of fulfilling the provisions of the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, Zimbabwe managed to designate 7 wetlands of international importance, also known as Ramsar sites. And these Ramsar sites are Lake Chivero, Driefontein grasslands in Gutu, Chinoi Caves, Mana Pools, Victoria Falls National Park, Cleveland Dam, and Monaville Lake. So these are our wetlands of national importance in the country, which were designated according to the provisions of the Ramsar Convention. And also, the Ramsar Convention has also been domesticated in the Environmental Management Act in Section 113. And the Environmental Management Act, for your information, is the major piece of legislation which governs environmental issues in Zimbabwe. And other than designating wetlands of national importance, we also have wetland restoration projects that we have supported in various communities in the country. And to date, we have supported about 300 of these wetland restoration projects, whereby we assist communities, especially in the rural areas where wetlands are mostly threatened by agricultural activities. Instead of leaving communities to use the wetlands anyhow, we then come in with our expertise and with resources to assist them to preserve the core of the wetland so that no activity are done in that particular part of the wetland. And then we designate a portion which can be used sustainably in a manner that does not degrade that wetland, in a manner that does not cause the wetlands to dry. So this actually helps in the sense that communities then have livelihood options from the restoration projects, whereby they have community gardens, and from those community gardens they can actually sell the produce and they can make a living from that. And we have also managed to develop and produce the National Wetlands Policy and the National Wetlands Management Guidelines. These documents, actually the Wetlands Policy has been approved by Cabinet. It was approved by Cabinet recently. And the main purpose of this particular document is to inform policymakers and even the users of the wetlands so that there is sustainable use of wetlands, and also to help raise awareness on the issues of mismanagement of wetlands on a national context so that those issues can be addressed and our wetlands can be preserved. Furthermore, we managed to develop a national wetlands map in partnership with the University of Zimbabwe, as well as the Zimbabwe National Geospatial and Space Agency, ZINSA. So this exercise was done early this year, and at the end of the exercise, a national wetlands map was produced, which has wetlands for the whole nation, which can be broken down to provinces, to districts, and even to ward level. And this is this is information that is very useful. It informs policy, it informs planners, it informs even the citizens in general of areas where wetlands are. So that's the work that has been done in of late regarding wetlands management. And like I said, that more needs to be done so that we really protect our wetlands and we move in line with the provisions of the Ramsar Convention. So that is where we are as a nation, and we are prepared to continue moving forward so that our wetlands are preserved.
Yes, in appreciation of what you said with the efforts that you are putting into saving the wetlands. But one thing we can agree on is that wetlands have been lost to human activity. And in putting a time frame to it, in the last 10 years, how many hectares of wetlands have been lost to human activity?
Maybe to start with, let me indicate the total land area that is covered by wetlands in the country. That is about 13.6 million hectares, which is about 35% of the total land area in the country. So of those wetlands that are in the country, we have lost wetlands, like you rightly said, over the past decade or so. And so the status of our wetlands are like we have 27%, approximately 27% of these wetlands that are severely degraded. And we have about 56% of these that are moderately degraded. So which leaves about 17%, which are in pristine condition. So what it means, it doesn't really mean that there is no hope for our wetlands, because even the wetlands that are degraded, they can be restored. Like I highlighted previously, that we've got wetland restoration projects. On some of the wetlands that where we have had these restoration projects, when the project started, the wetlands were severely degraded, or some of them were degraded. But as we went on with the project, we made sure that the core of the wetland was left to rejuvenate. Most of the wetlands actually were restored. I can give examples of some of these restoration projects. So, another one is the Kagonye wetland, which is in Wedza. So it's not like hope has been lost for our wetlands, but we need to put more effort in terms of restoration of these wetlands, so that at least the percentage of the wetlands that are in the pristine condition becomes greater than the percentage of the that are severely degraded. And in terms of the projects that we are doing towards making sure that we don't have much of these wetlands being degraded, besides the projects that we are supporting communities for restoration, we also raise awareness using different platforms, so that people are aware of the benefits of the wetlands and the activities that threaten these wetlands, and also what they are supposed to do to make sure that they protect the wetlands.
All right. So what are the penalties for destroying wetlands? And we've been talking about them, but we have not really stated why it's important to preserve them.
All right, so maybe let me start with the importance of preserving wetlands. Sometimes the reason why people end up doing various activities which degrade the wetlands is because maybe they don't have an appreciation of the benefits of those wetlands. They have no idea why the wetlands have to be preserved. So wetlands actually have got a lot of functions that are very crucial to the existence of both the environment and even to us as humans, as well as other creatures also that can be found on this planet. The first function that I want to talk about is flood control and soil erosion prevention. Wetlands play a very important role in flood control. Wetlands have got a property that they have where they act as sponges. So the sponge, what it does is that when there is excess rainfall, the wetlands absorb the excess water like a sponge. Then when it's dry now, during those dry spells or what, then that water is slowly released into the surrounding environment. So when excess water is absorbed, it means that no flooding is going to occur, because all the water that was going to flood has been absorbed by the wetland. And that's a very important function. I'm sure you are aware that in recent years, there's been a lot of flash flooding, especially in cities like Harare.
Yes.
Whereby we receive rainfall, and then you can't even move around in town, and there's lots of rainfall everywhere. So those are some of the impacts of degrading wetlands. And we're saying when that wetland absorbs that water, flooding has been prevented. But at the same time, during the dry spells, or at a time where there is not much water around, that wetland then discharges the water bit by bit into the surrounding areas. That's why if you get to an area, if you get to a wetland, some wetlands are perennial, which means they are wet for 12 months, for the full year, but some they are wet for a certain period, and for the remaining part of the year they might be dry. But you realize that during that period when the wetland will be wet, the surrounding areas, even the vegetation, will also be green, because they are drawing water from that wetland, because the wetland is now discharging water bit by bit into the surrounding environment. And if you relate it to what I was talking about on restoration projects, whereby we have consolidated gardens for communities, that's the concept that they use. Because we are saying at the periphery of the wetland, it's still wet, and people can actually practice agriculture there, taking advantage of the moisture that is coming from the wetland. So that's a very important function of wetlands that people should understand and should take advantage of. Then also in terms of erosion control, when water is flowing, when it reaches the wetland, usually because the wetland is not bare, it usually has a lot of vegetation in it, some grasses, some shrubs, and some trees that grow in that wetland. It also means that as the water flows, even its speed is reduced. And the plants in the wetlands, they also cause the speed of the water to be reduced. So it also means that even if there are any sediments or any soil particles that are flowing, they are then trapped into that wetland. So in terms of erosion, it has already been controlled, because erosion is generally the washing away of soil particles from one place to another. So when that is when that water actually reaches the wetland, then that flow is reduced, and the soil particles are trapped, then erosion has been reduced. The other function of wetlands is on water discharge and recharge. So, like I mentioned, that a wetland acts as a sponge. It draws excess water, and then during the dry spell, it releases that water slowly into the surrounding environment. So the water is not released only into the surrounding environment, but also even into underground aquifers. You know, the aquifers that are underground, where water flows, the water that we can
access through the boreholes.
As we dig our boreholes, as we even through our wells. So this wetland is responsible for groundwater recharge. If we don't have wetlands, we won't have any water underground. So that's a very important function. I'm sure in the past we've had issues of drying up of boreholes and other related issues. It could be an indirect impact of the destruction of wetlands. So it's very important for us to protect our wetlands, so that at least we have groundwater, because it's very important. Then we also have another important function, which is the purification of water and toxic retention. So, like I mentioned, that the wetland, let's say for flowing water, for surface water that will be flowing past wetlands. I mentioned that the sediments can be trapped by the plants in the wetland, including nutrients. Let's say water is the water has got some nutrients, it has got some toxic substances that are flowing together with it. As it reaches the wetland and there's trapping of those sediments, the nutrients and toxic substances are also trapped, so that as the water flows, the quality of the water will be better and it will be cleaner. Also, if there are any toxic substances, maybe from agriculture, from pesticides, all those can also be filtered and trapped by the wetland. And even as the wetland discharges water into the aquifers, the water that will go for recharge of the aquifers will be better quality, because as it passes through the wetland, as the water is absorbed, it's also purified, the nutrients are removed, the toxic substances are trapped, and the water will be of better quality. Then wetlands also play an important role in research and education. Many wetlands are used for those purposes where learners can actually go for look and learn tours. They can go for their research. They can actually use some wetlands as their study sites, even up to PhD level. So they are very important in that regard. And actually, our education sector depends on these wetlands for some of their students. Lastly, I'll talk about the habitat services that are offered by wetlands. Wetlands, they are home to a lot of fauna and flora. They support a lot of biodiversity. There are animals, there are birds, there are plant species that depend on wetlands for their habitats. I can give a few examples of ducks, frogs, or even fish. Because in our definition of wetlands, we include even rivers and lakes. So everything that can be found in such water bodies, we take it to be a wetland, and those species we also term them to be wetland species. We also have even plant species, some grasses like the reeds that actually grow in wetland areas. We also have even the fig tree, which usually grows in such wetlands. And also, some wetlands actually are home to some important bird areas like the cranes that are found in the Driefontein wetlands. So destroying the wetland means that you have destroyed someone's home. So we need to be very vigilant there and make sure that we protect the wetlands, because the moment that the wetland is destroyed, it means also that all these species, whether plant or animal, they won't have anywhere to stay. That's where they start to become extinct. They start migrating to other countries, maybe, where there are wetlands. So there's need for us to understand the importance of these wetlands. And after that, we put more effort towards protecting the wetlands. Then in terms of the penalties that are there for not protecting wetlands, maybe let me just give a summary of what the law says regarding wetlands. So when it comes to wetlands and even any other environmental issue, we use the Environmental Management Act, Chapter 2027. And in Section 113, the Act gives some provisions on the management of wetlands, and those provisions actually prohibit the reclamation, drainage, tunneling, drilling, cultivation, and introduction of exotic species in wetlands unless there is a license issued by the Environmental Management Agency. And contravention of this particular law attracts a penalty not exceeding level 10 or 6 months or both. So that's the provision of the Environmental Management Act regarding wetlands management.
So that means 6 months, are we saying you can be convicted and go to jail for 6 months?
Precisely.
Okay, so I hope this is a deterrent for anyone who wants to destroy wetlands.
Yeah, in terms of being deterrent, it depends actually, because if you were to be given that fine, you could say, this is a lot, and maybe, you would say, yes, the agency, they've done something. But then when you go to the next person now, maybe to them it's nothing. So we try to make sure that the fines give us the objective that we want, because the objective is not to take people's money or to do all sorts of things, but the objective is to make sure that people desist from activities that destroy these wetlands. And besides the fine, we also use a number of other initiatives and mechanisms just to get to that objective.
I now understand the objective of it, which is at the end we want to save the wetlands. That's the final objective of the thing. So next, after having an appreciation and understanding of the importance of wetlands, we go into pollution. So we would want you to explain to us, what is pollution, what are the different forms of pollution, and what is the agency doing to fight pollution in the country?
Pollution generally is the introduction of substances into the environment that have the potential to cause harm to that environment. And the issue will be in terms of the quality of the substance that has been introduced, and also the quantity of the substance that has been introduced, because the environment on its own has an ability to absorb pollutants. It has the ability to recycle pollutants, but it has a certain carrying capacity that it has. That's why in the beginning we spoke of the functions of EMA being to set up quality standards, whereby we are saying for any given substance, if it is to be discharged into the environment, it has to be of this particular quality, and it has to be of this particular quantity, so that it does not cause any adverse impacts on the environment. So the different types of pollution that we have air pollution, and it's self-explanatory, whereby substances are emitted into the air, and usually they'll be in gaseous form, and the impacts that they cause are airborne, and including airborne diseases or choking, or even affecting the color of the atmosphere. We also have water pollution. It's also self-explanatory, whereby substances are introduced into the water, and the result will be pollution of the water. It's now dirty, the quality has been reduced, maybe there are some harmful substances that have been introduced there, which could also result in negative impacts to the users of the water, whether be it humans or whether there are animals that are going to drink that water, or animals that live in the water. Remember, we spoke about our wetlands being also our rivers and our water bodies, and they are habitats to a number of living organisms. Then the other type of pollution, or the last one that I'm going to talk about, is land pollution, whereby the pollution is on the land, whether it's a chemical that has been discharged or deliberately, or is an accident, onto the land, it's land pollution. Whether it's waste that has been discharged onto the land, it's also land pollution. So basically, those are the types of pollution that I will talk about. And we have to make sure that in everything that we do, our day-to-day activities, we have to make sure that we are not causing pollution. Remember, in the Constitution of Zimbabwe, there are some environmental rights that are there in Section 73. And one of the rights is that every citizen of Zimbabwe is entitled to a clean, safe, and healthy environment that is not harmful to their health. And for us to achieve or attain that right, and to assist each other to realize that right, it means there should not be pollution. Pollution should be ruled out completely. And it's everyone's role to make sure that we work towards an environment that is clean, safe, and healthy. It simply means that it's an environment that is not polluted.
Okay. So how are you encouraging corporates and individuals to not pollute?
We have a number of programs that we are doing. Maybe the first one that I'll talk about relates to the issue of land pollution, which is basically the management of waste. Of course, there are a number of other substances that can pollute the land, but it seems solid waste or municipal waste is the major substance that is causing pollution to the land. And the way we work with citizens and even corporates, we use the carrot, we use the stick. When you talk about the carrot, you're talking about other means that are not prosecution, that are not fining and penalizing, like engagement and awareness, where we encourage people to be responsible citizens, where we want a mindset change in people, where we want people's attitudes towards waste management to change, and just to make sure that people are responsible in everything that they do, so that they don't cause pollution, but they have an understanding that if I do this, then my environment is clean and it's going to benefit me and not the authorities that be. So we encourage the extended producer responsibility, especially to the corporates, whereby we'll be saying for the products that they are producing, they should make sure that they follow them through from production up to the end of the cycle. For instance, if you are into mineral water production, you have a container that you use, maybe it's glass or maybe it's plastic. You shouldn't end at selling the product to the consumer. You should be responsible enough to make sure that you make a plan that enables you to ensure the safe disposal of that container that you are giving to the consumer. And that's where we talk about issues to do with recycling, where we encourage corporates to invest in recycling of containers that they use as they sell their products. And actually, recycling is one of the best ways that can be used in waste management. When you talk of sustainable waste management, when you talk of resource efficiency, when we talk about a circular economy, where we say the moment resources come into the environment, they should be used over and over again until so that we don't continue taking in new resources into the environment. So all that can be enabled by recycling. It is enabled by the fact that corporates will be responsible and they actually invest into that, so that we don't have their products littering the environment, because when we see litter in the environment, it mustn't be litter that you can actually trace to a certain corporate. Even in terms of corporate social responsibility, if as a corporate your products are scattered all over in the environment, it means you are not a responsible citizen as a corporate. So that's the engagements that we have been doing with the corporates to make sure that they are a bit responsible and they follow through their products up to the end, so that their products do not litter the environment. Also, we have supported the establishment of waste separation centers in most of the towns around the country, in partnership with the local authorities, because for us to move from a linear economy to a circular economy, the starting point is on waste separation at source. We say for the waste that is generated probably in a home setup or at your work premises, there's need for the waste to be separated, because each particular waste stream has a unique way of disposal depending on the characteristics of the waste. For example, plastic can be recycled, paper can be recycled, glass can be recycled, but there's also biodegradable matter. Like your vegetable cuttings, your grass cuttings, all that. So the way we dispose of a plastic is actually different from the way we then dispose this biodegradable matter, where biodegradable matter can be used for composting. So these waste separation centers now create an enabling environment for that sustainable waste management, where we then take all the waste that can be recycled, they'll be separated into a certain cage, and the other waste that cannot be recycled, maybe that needs to go for composting, goes also into a separate cage, and then we start from there. So we've established these waste separation centers for the benefit of communities, so that they can take advantage of those and take their recyclables to those centers, so that we assist each other to create a clean environment. We also have a recyclers directory that we have developed. Most people might not know where to take their recyclables to. So in order to assist each other in that regard, we developed that recyclers directory, and it's available on our website, www.emma.co.zw, for all citizens that would want to access it, so that they can actually take their recyclables where they should go. Then lastly, I'll talk about the National Cleanup Program. This is a government program that it was decreed by His Excellency Comrade Idi Mnangagwa in 2018. And he declared that the first Friday of every month is the National Cleanup Program. And what it entails is that every citizen is supposed to clean where they are. So it means outside your premises and areas surrounding your premises should be clean. Not that they should be cleaned only on the first Friday of the month. They should always be clean. But on the first Friday, it's an observance day where we all go out and we clean just for 2 hours, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., just to be a responsible citizen. A citizen who doesn't just wait for things to happen, a citizen who's not just complaining, saying, the environment is dirty, but someone who can actually stand up and participate and do something to solve a problem. And in this particular case, the problem that we'll be solving is pollution. And remember, I spoke about environmental rights in the Constitution. I spoke about the right to a clean environment. There's also another right which is the right to participate in matters pertaining to environmental management. So actually, every citizen has that right to participate. So when opportunities come where citizens are supposed to participate, I urge you to embrace them and participate and make sure that you are doing something towards the sustainable management of your environment. It's for your own good, for your own information.
It is.
Let's say you stay in area B and it's dirty. If that place is dirty and if there are diseases associated with the environment being dirty, they are going to affect those that stay in that particular area. And the same is true for if the environment is clean. So it means if you work together as communities to keep your environment clean, you're also going to enjoy the benefits of a clean environment. So I urge people to make sure that they participate in any other environmental programs that are there for the betterment of the environment.
Well, thank you, Joyce, for joining us. Thank you for making time to come through and clarify all these issues for us.
Thank you so much, Nonsi, for the opportunity to share environmental information with everyone. Thank you so much for having me on this program.
Okay. Well, would like to thank Joyce for coming through and clarifying on the Environmental Management Agency's mandate. We also spoke about the field fire season and the preventative measures. We also spoke about wetlands and how the agency is protecting them. And lastly, we spoke of pollution. So we are urging everyone every first Friday of the month, please participate in the cleanup campaign. Thank you, Joyce, for coming, and thank you again to all our listeners. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow us on our social media pages. Our handle is Ecoville ZW on all platforms. Join us next week for another episode. I'm your host, Nonsikelelo Kwaka.